How Do I Music? A podcast by Well Nice Music.
I just realized I was put off by the whole industry, and I was like, maybe this isn't for me. I wasn't having the same kind of emotional reaction. That is my one true love, and so I started not liking writing and not doing it for fun, and it's like that's not what I wanted out of life. So I kind of did a pivot and realized that radio was the way where I could be into the music industry. I could be involved with music.
Hello and welcome to How Do I Music, a not boring industry podcast by Well Nice Music. This is our first ever episode, so thank you for tuning in. Throughout this series, we're going to be talking to people from various corners of the industry, diving into their careers, getting some useful tips for artists, and hopefully making it interesting along the way. The first episode is with Tyler Boudreaux from KCRW. She is a wicked radio DJ, but also a music supervisor and event promoter. She wears many hats, as you can tell. She spins many plates. I'm not sure if there's any other ways to say it, but you get the idea. So let's get started. This is the interview with Tyler Boudreaux, and I'll see you on the other side. Let's jump straight into it, I reckon. We're going to start with a quick fire round, which so far I've discovered the quick fire round already isn't that quick. It encourages long form answers straight away, but we'll roll with it. We'll see how we go. So, name and occupation.
My name is Tyler Boudreaux, Tyler Boogie Boudreaux, and I'm a radio DJ and culture producer, and also music supervisor, disc jockey out in the wild, storyteller. Yeah, it's really hard to say it, but definitely radio DJ, radio producer, and storyteller, and music supervisor is like how I really describe myself. Yeah.
Last time music made you cry, dance, or somewhere in between?
Yeah, I just saw King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard at the Gorge.
Yeah.
And I was both crying and dancing. It was one of those shows that deeply touches you in a way that makes you feel like you're so lucky to be in that audience.
Yeah, for real.
And you can't wait until you get to grow old and talk about being at that show.
All-time favorite album. I feel like this is a question that everyone hates because it's impossible, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if I can give you favorite album of all time, but I will say McGee's 2-Star in the Dream Police record is an album that I haven't had a relationship with an album like this in a while, where it was like, I push play. I know it's like around 30 to 40 minutes. So if I have 30 to 40 minutes, I will push play and ride that whole wave of that album and go through all the ebbs and flows, all of the emotions. And then when it's done, I'll just restart it again.
What's the last song you listened to?
That's a good question. I literally just drove home last night. Okay. Oh, I know what it was.
It can be embarrassing.
Yeah, you're going to laugh because it's very, very relatable, or it's just, you can guess it at this point. It was King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, and it was Sleep Drifter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a song. Like you said, there's so much of their music to explore and get into. I've been a fan of theirs for like it's been like 4 or 5 years now at this point, and I'm still discovering music in albums that I like. I know each album as a whole, but like I'm still diving into each of their 26 records. And right now I'm having like a flying microtonal banana moment, and it's just such a great record. And seeing Sleep Drifter live really, really made me love it even more. And I feel like every time I listen to it now, I kind of transport back to the Gorge.
To that moment. Yeah, of course.
Exactly. So just chasing that feeling whenever I can.
The next question is going to be so impossible for you. Explain what you do in 3 words.
3 words. Listen, talk, feel.
Oh, nice. I like it.
Listen,
I like
talk,
it.
feel.
You did
Yeah.
it.
I did it.
I was like, this is going to be tough, man.
Yeah. No, I feel like it's funny. Like I do a lot of stuff, but I feel like when I think about, I fucking love listening to music and talking about it. Even music supervision stuff. It's like, you listen to all the music, you listen to what the producers and what the director and what what they're looking for, and then try to match that. So I think it's really cool you have to be receptive.
So can you tell us about your background, your story growing up, and what made you get into music and want to make it a part of your work?
Yeah, so I am a music lover through and through. Grew up in the backseat of my parents' car, listening to the radio and just having so much love for the music and the way the music made my parents so happy. We always had music playing in our house. My sister would be bumping her hip hop in the room. My older sister would introduce me to Sublime and Suicidal Tendencies.
Nice.
So I had a lot. My parents were listening to funk and R&B, and I was just growing up with so much fusion around me that, of course, I've started liking rock music and folk music. And it was actually pretty interesting because my family was like, where is this coming from? Why are you listening to the Doors in your room with the door closed? But I fell in love. I would say, my love for music kind of changed when I fell in love with the Doors. And I realized that poetry, which is really my first true love, I'm a writer at heart. And so hearing the poetry of the Doors really changed the way I thought about music, and hearing songwriting and the rich lyrics, that just blew my mind open. And I'm such a Jim Morrison fan. And so became super into the Doors, made that my whole personality.
Nice.
And
there's a good band to choose. There's worse things to make your personality. Go for it.
I thought so too. I was the only one at my school that was super into the Doors. Nice. There was obviously the pop girlies and the hip hop kids. And then I was like, yeah, you guys ever listen to the Doors? Riders on the Storm, baby.
They must know that tune. Surely everyone knows that one.
Yeah, exactly. They must. And I saw Almost Famous. I don't know if you know that film. I saw Almost Famous, and I was like, and I was like, oh man, I love writing. I love music. Music journalism's pretty cool. Maybe I'll try to explore that as a career, And this was me as a teenager kind of questioning, what do I want to do with my life? And I started being on the newspaper. I was writing about music and other things and expressing myself in a way that I was really happy with. But then I ended up going to college and I majored in journalism. And I was like, maybe I don't want to be a journalist. This was a very tense time for journalism. This was, 2012 to 2015. So not, it's not like the Trump years, but it was still very tense, and journalism was just kind of changing. The media landscape was changing. And so I kind of really was thinking about, is this where I want to go? Is this what I want to do? And I had been involved with the college radio station. And that was where I was like, okay, these are my friends. These are my people. Let's just meet up and talk about music. I get to get all these CDs and listen to them and really, play them if I want to. I have this freedom. And it was cool because you aren't really reporting on the music in the same way. You're not dissecting an artist, And I think that was important for me because I wanted to have a relationship with the music where I wasn't critiquing it all the time. You either love it, you either play it or you don't, and that's kind of the basis.
Was it the climate around journalism as an industry itself that was putting you off, or the climate around was it specifically music journalism and the written form?
It was all journalism because at the time, in college, in journalism school, you do all types of journalism, I was doing breaking news. I was doing, I was putting multimedia packages together, and like all of these skills, I learned so many skills that I still use in my work today. So it's not like it was all for nothing.
Yeah, sure.
But I think the more I was doing it, I was doing photojournalism. I just realized I was put off by the whole industry, and I was like, maybe this isn't for me. I wasn't having the same kind of emotional reaction to the writing as I wanted to. That is my one true love. And so I started not liking writing and not doing it for fun. And it's like, that's not what I wanted out of life. So
Totally.
I kind of did a pivot and realized that radio was the way where I could be into the music industry. I could be involved with music. I can help uplift artists and musicians and get to know them in a way that's different than if I were reporting on them, if I were covering an artist, And so after college, I was like, yeah, I think radio is really where I want to be. And I pursued KCRW here in Santa Monica, or broadcast out of Santa Monica, really around the world. But, it's Southern California Public Radio. And I think the mission-based service of public radio is so important to me because I love community service. I love volunteering. And that's actually how I started at KCRW. I was a volunteer for I think it was like 6 months I was volunteering, and I got to learn so much about how a radio station operates. And I got to sit in the studio with DJs as they were talking about this great music. And it was all love. Like I said, you didn't play things you didn't like. If you played it on your show, you really liked it and you wanted to tell your listeners about this great piece of music that they just heard. And that was really inspiring because I discovered a lot of music that I love, and I was able to share music with the DJs that I was really into. And so I started having amazing experiences at the radio station, and ended up becoming a volunteer coordinator, working in the office, away from the music, around the music, but away from it. And then started DJing because I was like, I wanted to shoot my shot at KCRW, and I had college radio experience. I knew how to work a board. I could do it. And so I started making demos and working with the team. And eventually in 2020, the pandemic happened, the world shut, there was no more live music. And that hurt my heart a lot because at the time, live music has always been my love, and being at a show is one of the greatest feelings, just being immersed in the sound. And so when there were no shows and life changed for everyone around the world, I was like, well, you only have one life to live. I'm not trying to sit at a desk all day in my house working from 9 to 5. That's not how I find joy. And isn't that the most important thing on this earth? So I ended up quitting. I took a buyout and traveled around the country, bought a van, ended up driving to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and seeing a bunch of friends on the West Coast in the Greater West.
Nice.
And I came back and I started DJing on another radio station. And it didn't take too long before KCRW called me, and they were like, okay, we're adding new DJs. We're bringing people back into the studio. Because once again, everyone had been doing it remote broadcast. Everyone was at home. And so much had changed in that time where I left that I got a call and was like, hey, come back. We want you on air. Let's start, let's start broadcasting you.
Did you have the same thing in the US where over lockdown radio and podcasts went boom, just went up a level because
100%.
Yeah, so that happened.
It really
for
did.
you as well. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because people, first off, I think people were seeking connection. I think people wanted to, feel humans talking with each other about things, because you weren't able to like go out with your friends or, I remember watching like live sessions like from home, when musicians were doing that. And I was like, damn, this is the only concert I get to go to nowadays.
It was so weird because I remember I used to live in a flat with 6 people, and it was great. It was great in lockdown because we all got along really well, and the flat was just massive. It was really cool. And then we'd have these, basically Friday nights would come and we put on these live sets on this projector in the living room, and we had our own mini house parties. But it was weird because it was
awesome.
A good replacement. I mean, it was kind of a replacement for going to an actual gig as best you could do. But it's also this like tinge of sadness because you'll just know that it's like, oh, this is amazing, we're having a great time, but it's not the real thing.
Right.
And everyone was trying to find ways of replacing that in different ways. And I think that's why radio and podcast, obviously, human connection as much as you can.
Totally. And that's cool because I feel like it also showed you and your flatmates that you could create that sense of community together, like you are able to throw on some parties and make it feel as close as it can be,
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people retreated into themselves, retreated into their art and really, did some soul searching because you had to survive. It's like, who am I if I'm not doing my rituals, if I'm not going out to get coffee every day, if I'm not meeting my friends for a drink at the bar? It's like, you have to kind of retreat into yourself. And so I was like, all right, well, now's the best time to learn how to DJ. I'm sure I was not alone. It was an epidemic of DJs that came out of the pandemic. And so it was cool to come back, when the world was coming back, 2021 in September. And I was like, on the air, on KCRW, like my voice was broadcasting to millions of people around the world. And I was playing music that I loved, that I was passionate about.
What happened when you got that call? Were you expecting it, or was that a surprise, that moment?
Oh, it was a complete surprise. I was not expecting it. I didn't have any hint of it. I saw the music director's name on my phone and was like, why would she be calling? And I remember being on my steps outside of my apartment and just like jumping and being like, oh my gosh, like this is for real. Like this is, sick, all the hard work. Yeah. And to bring it back to the music industry a little bit, it's tough to get in where I think a lot of people try to find their corner, find their people. You have to network. You have to try to figure out what lane you want to go to. And I don't think I ever really told myself I want to be in the music industry, like said that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be a part of music. I wanted to be in the scene more than the industry. Yeah. And I think I wanted to hang out with artists that make cool music, go to shows, and then bring all of that energy on the airwaves and share it with people. And that's pretty much what I get to do. And it's amazing. And, a lot of the other music work that has come out of it has been so rad because it's just ways to continue developing relationships with other music industry people that make the shit happen. Like until I started music supervision, I didn't really know the structure of the industry. Like I didn't even really understand publishing, to be honest. And now that I understand it more, I kind of see like why this business exists in the way that it does, how it sometimes hurts artists, how it sometimes, how it sometimes helps when you have a good team around you pushing you. And even on the radio side, there are moments where I had heard of an artist and I heard their music and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're so great. Like, why aren't they bigger? I'm like trying to reach out to them or people behind them. And I'm like, let's make you go crazy. We need more people to hear this. But, the structure just kind of wasn't there. And so I think, having the knowledge of the music supervision where I kind of got to look behind the curtain and see it helped me understand a little bit more about, how an artist can be really, really successful. And, I think in the example of an artist like King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, they own everything, They own all of their masters, all of their publishing. They are like, I'm sure now that I think they just recently settled kind of a restructuring deal with Universal, but I think it's pretty cool to be like the master of your own ship. And I think that's how the music really reaches all the people versus, sometimes music can be held back by labels. And,
I can imagine King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard, what they've done is not label strategy. No label tells you to release 27 albums in how many years. Like that's a band decision. It's fuck it, we do what we want. And even if they had a label deal, a lot of label deals are kind of run on 5 album deals or whatever. So if you get them all done quickly, just like, right, see you later. we honored our contract.
No, they're like, we're done.
It's taken us 3 days.
No, that's 100. No, that's a really, that's true.
Yeah.
They are making decisions. I mean, I think so. They've been this current tour that they're on in the US right now. They are live streaming every show, like I said. And that was a strategy that a lot of people in the industry were scratching their heads at. Like, what are you doing? Like, don't you want people to go to your shows? Yeah. Like, why are you giving these shows away for free? But what they ended up doing, because they know themselves, they know their music, and at this point, they know their fan base. They're smart.
Of course.
And I think that trust, that risk, you gotta feel it and know that you're on the right path. And they knew if they put out these shows for free, it's going to generate more interest. And now people are going because they see the show on YouTube and they're like, well, damn, I would drive out, 2-3 hours to go to their next show. Like, I want to do that. I want to see this live.
Completely different experience for the people as well. And I saw something recently which basically said that the future of the fan to artist connection should be treated a bit more like how sports teams treat their connection fans, where you get this super fandom involved with people who just like will drink up like content, whatever it is, and then they'll go to shows, whatever. And that chimes with that completely. Just because you watch a sports event on TV doesn't mean that you don't want to go and watch that team down that stadium. They don't replace each other. They're just more options available.
Yeah, and it feeds that yearning, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny you say that because that is an excellent point, because I literally was watching some shows on my phone, like underneath the table at dinner. Like I'm like, yeah, Giz is playing in Baltimore right now. Like, and I've seen my friends in sports mode, especially it's football season here. So like, they're like, they've got, what's it called? They're like betting on games. They've got parlays. They're like into it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just watching this concert on my phone. And I think it's interesting to talk about that fan artist relationship too, because, James Blake has been having, he's also been like really inspiring these conversations about changing the whole dynamic of this industry.
Yeah.
And his recent endeavor, I would say, is like, changing the ticketing system. He's like, I'm tired of seeing my fans pay way more than they need to be paying, and all of those hidden fees not even going to him or his team,
Yeah.
So I think the fan artist relationship will be changing over the years because of bands like Giz, that are showing people that if you really give your fan base love and dedication, then they'll be loyal to you, and they'll show up early for your show and stand in line for hours just to get a poster.
And I think there's less need for middleman in pretty much all of this, right? So that fan to artist connection used to be, you used to need ticket aggregators and stuff, but because everyone's got these platforms where they are reaching these people, their fans, so directly, you don't really need to give someone a cut that's going to charge an extra $100, £100 just for themselves. So hopefully that will empower artists to charge less and earn more, because they're just getting rid of the companies in between.
I do see the need for like some middlemen, because like, once again, like I feel like, Giz is top of their game right now. Like they're not the average indie band these days. Like they're just not. And I know, like I was saying, I miss a lot of bands. I miss a lot of sounds, and my inbox is full of music. And without people sending me music, sometimes I wouldn't even know these bands exist.
Yeah, of course.
And so, I think, I really, really give a lot of props to like the people that work in music supervising, that send out those blasts, and the people that do radio promotions. Because it really, when it lands in my inbox and I listen to it and I have that moment of like, wow, this small band, sometimes even from LA, it's not like they're like, from really small towns. They'll be like here in the same city, and I'll be like, whoa, this is so crazy. Like, this is an amazing sound I want to keep exploring.
So tell us the difference between, because you wear many hats, you're curating events as well as doing your radio and this music supervision. Tell us about the process of listening to music for each one of them and how they differ. How different is it across it? I'm interested.
It is very different, and it'll be given differently depending on the service. So like, it's funny because with music supervision, I'm getting albums much further in advance than radio.
Yeah.
And they want us to hear it. So it'll land in my inbox and it won't come out until like 4 months, 5 months from now. But then you'll have that in mind for if something comes up, if a project is coming up, or if you're working on a project and you're like, you know what, I do need a sound like this for this cue. Like, and so I think it's really cool to have that kind of different mentality when approaching my inbox. But yeah, I'll listen to something, and I think the first thing I think of when I listen to music in my inbox is like my radio show.
Yeah.
And I think even before I'm thinking about my radio show, I'm thinking about if it's moving me or not. Like, am I just listening to it passively? Am I engaged with it? Or am I just kind of like, all right, I'm checking it out, I'm nodding along, I'm like, this is cool, or maybe not,
Yeah.
I have to admit, I do scrub. I scrub through music a lot. I
don't think you have the time to not.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't. And I don't, but I will say, if I'm listening to like the first 30 seconds of a song and I dig it and I'm scrubbing to see where it goes, I'll go back and listen to it in full if I'm like, okay, I need to hear the build. I need to like really sit with this one.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can really like, you kind of can get a first impression and kind of know if you're going to dig it or not. And, but like I said, there are times when you hear something for the first time and you're like, maybe not. And then you hear it again and you're like, damn, what was I thinking? I've had that many times happen to me. And so I think with my inbox and with getting music, even in the mail, I get sent a lot of physical CDs. I get sent a lot of records. And I do enjoy listening to CDs a lot.
Wow, okay.
Versus in my car. Versus in my email.
Wow.
Yeah, it's cool to pop in a CD and be like, okay, this is really, it sounds good, or maybe it doesn't, and I'm skipping through each track.
Yeah.
But I definitely think about how I feel about it, and then I kind of start to compartmentalize like, would this be good on my radio show? Or, if I'm working on a project, like I'm looking for this thing. But if I'm in project mode, like on a music supervision job,
yeah, sure,
it's very laser focused in a way that is not so much with my radio show. Like I can just be kind of like taking in whatever and receiving whatever. And I'm not, I'm not trying to be like, oh, I'm only trying to play trip hop on my show.
Yeah.
Like I literally will just take in whatever, and it's all genres, and I'll put it together as it needs to be put together. But with a music supervision job, it's someone else's vision that you're trying to cater to.
Sure.
So you kind of have to be a little laser focused and really like have some on the nail ideas, but also some kind of like far-fetched ideas that could work, that you're like, kind of just take it. It might be a little risky, but just like, let's take this moment and try it.
So we have a tradition on this podcast for every person to recommend somebody that we could get on to talk to who has a good story to tell within music. Who else in music, in your opinion, is worth talking to and has a good story to tell?
Yeah. Honestly, yeah. I mean, dude, Dan Wilcox is a really cool dude. And I feel like his story is very different than mine because he's just like, he's been in the industry much longer than me. And I think he's seen a lot of the kind of ebbs and flows of the music supervision. He's been at this for a long time. I'm also going to recommend Liza Richardson. She's a badass music supervisor and has been doing absolutely like every single show. Yeah, she's cool. So those two for sure I would recommend.
Nice. What's the favorite radio show, favorite project that you've been a part of so far? Can you pick one or two?
Yeah, I definitely can. There was this AMC Plus show called Damascus, and it was one of those cases where the streaming service AMC Plus kind of like ended up like soft canceling it, so it never really made it to air. But the music supervision we did for that show was so good, and I worked with Dan Wilcox. He's a KCRW DJ, and he kind of took me under his wing for supervision, introduced me to the world of supervision. And I feel like for that show, we just it was like a black sci-fi show a little bit. So we got to be like some classic cues, but also kind of like more skewing like alternative R&B sounds. Like there was a Stone's Throw artist that I was really excited to put on there. And that just felt like, since it was kind of somewhat ridiculous scenes, like kind of more imagination involved.
Yeah.
And ridiculous in a good way, not in a bad way. Like he's like looking on a invisible screen and like it's like an iPad, he's like in the air. But like for things like that aren't so I don't know, just more imagination involved, and you can kind of be a little more expansive with the music choices. And as far as like radio show, my favorite radio show that I've done in a while, I love all of my radio shows the same. I'm just kidding. No,
boring, boo.
I know, exactly. No, I got to do Morning Becomes Eclectic, and that's like the flagship radio show on KCRW, and that to me was my favorite radio show in recent months, because I got to push myself in a new way, because my usual show is Thursday night at 10 to midnight.
Yeah.
And, that's a vibe in and of itself. It's nighttime. I'm doing it for all those, night owls and late night drivers and workers out there.
Yeah.
But the morning show is like,
you got to
let's
cater
wake
for
up.
everyone, right?
Exactly. It's for the kids in the car on the way to school.
There's no risky.
It's for,
choices.
the moms making meals in the kitchen. It's for, it's even for the office. A lot of people have that show on in their office spaces. So I was super stoked to kind of get into that morning mindset and offer some day sounds that wouldn't really fit on my show. And also because it's, iconic program, I had to, step it up. And I was making sure it truly was an eclectic show from track to track. I was just kind of jumping over, like, weaving this sound and this experience for the listeners that I carefully crafted in a way that pushed me to a new level of curation. And yeah, I just felt so proud of it after the show. I was like, okay, this might be it. And I revisit it pretty often.
How much are you thinking about the listener when you're picking your tunes versus just choosing stuff because you're like, I know this is fucking sick? How does it weigh up in your mind?
I usually do. I curate my shows. I craft them together. Each of my radio shows have a title, not so much a theme, I would say, but they have a title. It's almost like a journal entry. It's like a journal for the week. And I see, I've worked with a lot of DJs that go off on the fly. And to me, I bow down because that is so, once again, I almost stopped myself from cursing. That is so fucking cool. I had to do it. I feel that's a good little trigger to have. No, but it's so fucking cool because you're able to my library is so deep and so all over the place that I can try to think of things on the fly and I don't think I would nail it in the way that I want to, and I think, there's an amazing, Jason Bentley, he can craft a radio show just like, okay, what will go good next? And meanwhile, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to know beforehand, I want to kind of build that experience. But that's the thing with a radio program, if I were doing that live, in front of a dance floor, in front of people, it wouldn't feel the same because I'm forcing my experience on them, in a different way than it is me in a studio. I'm sharing this space with people on a dance floor. So absolutely, when I'm doing a live set, I have to be on the fly. I have to feel it. I have to go with what I know, but on the air, I love to kind of curate and craft this experience and make a program.
Yeah, nice. I mean, it is different. You get that real-time feedback from playing out live that you don't get on a radio show, right? So totally, it's harder. You probably tell, I guess, from chat online and stuff how things are playing out a bit, but not quite the same as literally seeing a dance floor full of people in real time.
No, it's so true. And Anthony Valadez, who's a DJ out here in LA, he had a really great comparison. He's like, when you're on the air, it's like throwing a football and you don't know if anyone's going to catch it. You don't know who's out there catching it. You're just throwing balls and just hoping that people catch it on the other end. But when you're live in front of an audience, in front of a crowd, trying to move this crowd too, you see who's catching the ball and if people are missing it and if you're not throwing it right or not aiming it correctly. And so you have to feed off of that because it's a disservice to that experience, that collective experience you're building. In a studio, it's just me, but in a room or in a club or on a, at a festival, it's all of us. We're all building this together.
Certainly.
And sometimes the audience will inspire a different direction than I originally thought, I used to love making, I used to bring a bunch of records to my club sets and be like, yeah, I want to kind of start off a little psych groovy. And then there'd be people that wanted to dance to house, they were like, no, I need 130 BPMs right now.
I know what I want.
I know, exactly. And so, and obviously it's a give and take because if I'm giving it, that's what's moving me. I want you to move to something that's moving me.
Yeah.
So, you have to be trust your own instincts, but also receptive and make sure you are engaged.
Is there radio show maybe earlier on in your career that you look back to that didn't go as planned, or something that was scary on air? Tell us a story about something that maybe didn't go as planned or was a bit scary.
Oh, I can definitely tell you.
Yes, please. This is going to be good.
Oh man, this is actually it. It was a good learning lesson. You know, every challenge is a learning lesson. You have to remember that, because you come out of it on the other side a little stronger than you thought. So,
or traumatized, but
yeah, or maybe a little bit of both. Yeah. You know, there's always a slight edge of trauma. But I usually do curate my shows. Like, I'll build it throughout the weeks too. You know, like I'll hear a song playing out of a car and I'll be like, oh, that's so good. Like, I should play that on my show on Thursday. So I'm like building it throughout the week. And then when it's time to get on air, I like, you know, have this feeling curated. There was this one Sunday I was filling in for another DJ who was out, and I thought the show was from 3 to 6 p.m. But in reality, it was from 12 to 3 p.m.
Oh, wow.
And I had switched it up, and I was like, well, at the time, so I didn't for those weekend shows when I'm covering for other people, I sometimes will curate heavily. Sometimes I'll just bring in some records and go off on the fly. But it's kind of less of a like, this is my program feeling.
Sure.
So I hadn't really prepared the whole show. I knew a couple of songs I wanted to play, and I hadn't prepared the whole show yet because I thought I had at least 2 more hours, and I did not. I got a text at 12:15. Hey, where are you at? You're supposed to be on air. And I was like, oh my gosh. And, you know, Sunday, as you can imagine, is a very big listening day. Yeah. People are at home. They have the radio on in the kitchen and hanging out and in the garden. It's a thing. So I was like, oh my goodness. So I'm like getting my stuff together. I get my DJ bag. I run to the station and I go in and I'm like, okay, I have these handful of songs. I have like 8 songs I know I want to play. It's a 3-hour show. So I'm like, all right, I'll just use that to launch. And I completely did a show on the fly. And like I said, I feel like that pushed me out of that comfort zone of I didn't know where I was going next, but I built this show accordingly. I timed it accordingly, which for me at that time, I think I'd only been on the air for a year. So I was still, you know, I mean, you're still always getting used to the broadcast time limit and the element of time and the breaks that you have to do. Like, it's you're building this broadcast. It's not just playing a bunch of music. You have to talk over, you have to play spots, you have to, hit certain marks at certain times. I had to play the news on the Sunday show. So the time element is so crucial. And that was a big challenge for me on that day where I was like, all right, I got 4 or 5 songs. I know the last song is a little bit longer. I can fade it down if I need to go into the break. Like, it was so cool. And it was a crazy show. I remember it being like kind of all over the place, like some electronic, some, favorite loves. I was going in my library and being like, oh my gosh, I forgot about this song. Let me play it next. That'll sound good.
How much heat do you get from your producers to hit those marks? Where are they in your ear all the time? Like, you missed this. Come on, you got to make up for this.
No, it's just I don't have. Okay. I'm producing myself, which is crazy. Okay. No, I mean, it's actually, which is once again part of the challenge too. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, all right, it's me. I got a log full of spots. I know where I need to go. I have these 8 songs that are gonna pretty much, guide me to the next sound that I want to do. And I was able to pull some stuff. I like ran into the music library, pulled some CDs, and I was just like, we're gonna have some classic 90s CDs set. I want to play a bunch of CDs this whole set and make it special for you, because these are sounds you're not going to really hear on the radio. And these are sounds that are special to KCRW because we're kind of the only people that have these CDs or these promos or, these extra long singles that I get to share.
Where do you see the future of radio heading? We're talking about how COVID affected radio and made it go through the roof, especially with podcasting as well. Do you think there's always going to be room for that live radio aspect? Because, that people talk about it a lot. Is it going to be around forever? What's your take?
Yeah, I do understand that media as a whole is changing so much. How we consume media is very different than even 4 or 5 years ago before the pandemic, like we were talking about. I think that radio will always have a place in our society because it is not tethered to the internet. It is not tethered to electricity even, it takes electricity to operate it for sure. I know what you mean, but you can just have a battery operated radio. And I am one of those people that believes everyone in the world should have radio, because if something goes wrong in your community, that's going to be your main source of information. And, that's going to be what you can rely on to know what's happening, And I think we saw some of that when, the January 6th and here in America, the January 6th Capitol riot, whatever we call it these days. That was one of those cases where the radio was taken over and people were like, well, is our government about to collapse? Like, what's going to happen with this, And people were tuned into the radio because you can refresh on Twitter, but having someone feed you that information is so, so, so crucial. So I think on that tip, radio will be around forever. I think our listening habits have changed and people are listening to Spotify. I listen to Spotify a lot, or, Apple Music or streaming services. But I think tuning into the radio and hearing your song, even as for musicians, that's a feeling you can't really capture on a streaming service, like especially in LA where you're in your car so damn much, radio is that friend you have to drive along to or to be stuck in traffic with, and hearing your song on the radio is so cool. And to see artists posting videos of themselves, like hearing their song on my radio show.
Yeah.
Like I see the joy, and that makes me feel like, okay, radio will be around for a while. And I think its impact will always continue to push, the scene forward in different ways. Because also I think a lot of people are realizing that the structure of streaming is not really helpful for the artists, but of course, getting radio plays for an artist means a lot. It means you can put that in a press release. You can add that to your kind of cachet. Yeah. You can also, you get paid for this, so it's like, it's a model that will continue to exist. I think people on the outside of the radio world might not really feel the same way. I think about people that live in like New York and they're like always walking and not really engaged with the radio the same way I am here in LA. But you see those live sessions even, I think the ways that radio stations are changing to be kind of, different media fronts. Our YouTube channel right now, KCRW's YouTube channel is like beefing up to host all of these great live sessions we have in our archives. Yeah. And that's the type of stuff, like when you see an artist live on the radio or you hear them, it's so cool. It's just like it's a piece of magic, because it's not going to sound the same as a concert, it's not going to feel the same as, listening to just the record, like building that sound in a studio that usually only happens on the radio. So
what song should we play out to and why do you like it so much? Assuming you like it.
Okay. Honestly, I feel like I'm going to do, just because I saw them last night and they're still kind of in my head. Do you know Raspberry Jam by the All-A-Laws?
No, I don't.
Do you know the All-A-Laws?
No, not at all.
Oh man, they're like Okay, so the reason I'm going to pick this song, not only because I saw it live last night, but mainly because I saw it live last night, but partially because it really is kind of a quintessential California sound. It's that groove, it's that vibe. It feels like sunshine, and it just makes you want to, like, you know, be at the beach with your friends, hearing the waves crash. So that's a feeling I always want to share with people. And this song is somewhat, I love it. Kind of, I think of it as kind of a theme song to not only my show, but just my whole love for radio and love for music at this point in my life.
Oh, perfect. That sounds like the perfect choice.
Hell yeah. So yeah, Raspberry Jam by the Alalas.
Thanks to Tyler Boudreaux for coming on the show. Please do check out her radio program on KCRW. She is wicked and it's well worth a listen. If you like what you heard, we've got plenty more coming your way. So please do find us on socials. Do hit that subscribe button and all of that stuff that I will have to annoy you about because you won't do it otherwise. Find us at How Do I Music on socials, and we've got wellnicemusic.com if you want to check out what we do and some of our roster's work. We've got some wicked artists and some quality independent music worth checking out. All right, that's it for now, but we'll catch you next time. Coming Mondays. Are you ready?
How Do I Music? A podcast by Well Nice Music.